This 23rd day of March 2021 at 7 p.m. Next on the agenda is roll call. We'll start roll call with Mayor Pro Tem Brasher, please.
Frazier here.
Gonzalez here.
Ramirez here.
Vincent here. Ega here.
Grant's here.
Ibis here.
Dennis here.
Let the record show we have a quorum. Councilmember Arriaga is running a few minutes late. Do I hear a motion to excuse Councilmember Arriaga's presence right now?
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Brasher, seconded by Councilmember Pinson. We'll go for a vote, please.
Frazier, yes.
Gonzalez yes.
Ramirez, yes?
Vincent, yes. Ega, yes.
Grant's yes.
Ibis, yes.
Dennis, yes.
Motion passes. Okay, invocation, Councilmember Pinson, if you would do us the favor, please.
Let us pray. Our Father who art in heaven, Lord, we come to you with bowed heads and humble hearts. Lord, we can thank you for the many blessings you bestowed upon us. Thank you, Lord, for blessing us to gather together today and joining us of like minds to consider our the many possibilities of improving the city. Pray your blessings upon this meeting to bless it, to be what you'd have it to be. Bless us to conduct ourselves decently and in order. Pray your blessings upon this meeting and everyone present. These and other blessings we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Let the record show that Councilmember Arriaga is here, 7:02 p.m. If you'll stand, please, for the allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
the Texas flag pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Okay, welcome, everybody. Next on the agenda is the public hearing on an ordinance amending the official zoning map of the city of Elgin, Texas, adopted in Chapter 46, Section 46-3 Revised Code of Ordinances, City of Elgin, Texas, 2013, and making this amendment a part of said official zoning map. To wit, to rezone from R1 Single Family District to A Multiple Family District for lots 40A and 40B Ashby subdivision. Both properties being a total of 0.9538 acres, said tract being more described in Exhibit A, and providing a savings clause and repealing conflicting ordinances and resolutions. Do we have anybody that wants to speak on this at this time on the public hearing? Okay, if you'll come up, please. Just state your name and address, and please try to keep your comments to about 3 minutes.
Good evening. Thank y'all for everything y'all do, serving our city and the volunteer job. I know it's not a fun job sometimes. I did want to speak on the public hearing today. I wouldn't even known about it if I hadn't driven down Main Street and saw the sign posted, right? And I pulled over, read the sign and the dates, and this was the last date that y'all were gonna have the hearing. But I do support the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission of not approving this change. I do feel sorry for the homeowner and the property owner for what we've allowed as a city to be built there. I mean, it didn't start as that. The city has approved all these additions to this property, and it's kind of a huge mess. And I agree with the property owner that something needs to be done. But I don't think that a fourplex going in its spot is the right thing for Main Street. And if we could find a solution for them, I would support something that's more in line with what Main Street looks like, maybe a multi-unit building that looks like a Main Street home, and looks more aesthetically pleasing to that property. I do feel for them, even if we mimicked something downtown and turned it commercial with retail on the bottom and residential on top. We have that downtown, which is on Main Street as well. But just a fourplex where you have 20 cars out front causing more traffic near that intersection that is already a bad place to get in and out of, I just don't approve of this zoning change, and I just wanted that on record. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to take the opportunity to speak in this public hearing concerning the ordinance? Okay, let's move on to public comments. The first public comment I'm going to read out loud, and it's from Stephanie Lipke. It says, "Dear Mayor Ramirez and Elgin City Council members, I would like to bring to your and the citizens of Elgin's attention some ongoing concerns while you start the certificate of obligations bond process. During City Manager Thomas Mattis's 8 years with the City of Cowell, he brought general obligation bond elections to the voters, not certificate of obligation bonds. No election needed to finance the city's growth and infrastructure. As City Manager of Cowell, he and his council obviously believed the voters of Cowell were smart enough and involved enough to make those decisions for themselves. He partnered with the citizens. Why is it different here in Elgin? By not including the citizens, the City of Elgin is saying we don't trust our citizens or voters to make the right decisions. How insulting to our citizens. Councilman Juan Gonzalez commented at the last meeting that the City Council will listen to the citizens, but we would just do what we want. These statements have led to a tremendous loss of public integrity for the entire council due to the action of the city manager. Thankfully, Councilman Ibis is shining the light on his disparity of this process. It is also noteworthy that not to exceed amount of $24 million would have never flown with Mattis's previous city council in Kyle. The only CO bond Mattis got approved in Kyle was for $700,000. It seems like in Elgin, the sky is the limit. Remember, this is the man that covered for an absent chief of police for close to 2 years. It took the chief of police and emergency coordinator abandoning the city during the worst storm in history to get some results. Too little, too late. Is this the best choice to steer our community going forward? I think it's important to note that Kyle Mayor Lucy Johnson has sought and earned the Texas Comptroller Transparency Star for going above and beyond for their transparency efforts, only after Mattis resigned. It took several years to fix, but the city of Kyle has now received this award 4 years running. All supporting documents to this letter can be found on the Concerned Citizens of Elgin Facebook page. Better Elgin 100%. Thank you, Stephanie Lipke. Is there anyone else that would like to speak during the public comment section? Brian?
Are you talking about this particular issue or just public comments?
Public comments in general, sir. Go ahead, sir. Just state your name and address, and please keep it to 30 minutes. I mean, not 30. No, we don't want, no, 3 minutes.
Do I do this with my mask on or off?
You can do it with your mask off.
Okay, thank you very much. I find it's a little bit constricting. I'm Brian McKinney. Been here 7 years. I live at 406 Old McDade Road, right here in Elgin, Texas. My statement tonight is one of purpose and gratitude. I'm not asking for anything. In the summer of 2020, an ad hoc pro-police group of concerned citizens assembled to support Elgin Police Department law enforcement professionals who had earned the respect and the loyalty of citizens living here, only to be unjustly fired, demoralized, or forced to resign. We circulated a petition, which I'm sure you've all seen, expressing our concern, which garnered about 500 signatures plus or minus, and have since added many, many more Elginites to our ranks, especially during the freeze. And although the demands stated on our petition have, for the most part, been fallen on deaf ears, through an unrelenting torrent of open records requests, and concerned citizens of Elgin have documented litany of unquestionably concerning information when it comes to how city management and the EPD have operated over the past few years. I've no doubt that members of the City Council will hear our voice on this and other issues in the upcoming election and for some time to come. The officers that we counted that time we filed our petition had amassed over 80 years of experience rooted here in Elgin. They protected us, they kept our streets safe, and they built many personal relationships within the community that still stand. Given the news that Chief South has left the force he gutted, I know that some former EPD folks may be here tonight, I don't know, or maybe watching a live stream of this meeting. So I'm here tonight as one of Elgin's concerned citizens to say to them, We continue to keep you in our hearts and minds and prayers. And our thanks go out to Crystal Jackson, Officer Chelsea Deal, K-9 Officer Siva, Officer Jeremy Shelstetter, Officer Toby Doyle, Sergeant Chris Wall, Sergeant David Allen Gerloff, Sergeant Frank Delgado, Sergeant Isaac Leal, Sergeant Jesse Deal, and Sergeant Paul Williams, and everyone else whose name I have.
Mr. McKinney,
We are
please,
truly
please wrap it
grateful.
up.
We are truly grateful for their service and
Thank you.
dedication to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any other public comments now? I know there's others that want to speak when we hit the agenda, so we'll do that. No other public comments? All right, we'll move on. Next on the agenda is the city manager's report. And Tom, if you'll take that over, please. Do we have any public comments on the item number, well, I guess we'll talk item number 1 first. Item number 1 under the city manager's report is review and discussion of the proposed City of Elgin 2021 Certificates of Obligation and 2021 Refunding Bonds Program. So if you have a comment that you want to speak now on that item, you can let me know. Step up to the mic. Krista, if you'll come up, state your name and address, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Well, good evening. My name is Krista Lee Marks. I live at 208 East 8th Street. This is my 49th year as a resident in Elgin. It is my 31st year as an employee of Elgin ISD, and I have a very vested interest in our town and our community. I just wanted to share a little bit with you as you talk about bonds and you talk about investments in our community. My role now in the school district is as a human capital coordinator, and my favorite part of my job is recruiting. And just today, I was involved in a job fair and speaking with potential teachers to come to try to bring them to Elgin ISD. And I spoke to them about us being designated a fast-growing district, but paired that with the fact that our town and our community is invested in downtown. And y'all, they really don't care how many housetops we have coming in. What they care about is what our downtown is and what our town stands for and what it stands by and what it looks like and the opportunities that we have available to them and to all members of the community. So I wanted to be here today and speak to you from that hat, and also wearing my hat as the newly elected secretary of Elgin Main Street Board. Again, my commitments to our community run very deep. And again, I want to thank you for your past and future and present support for the initiatives that we have happening downtown to keep downtown Elgin a vibrant and happy, healthy place to be.
Thank you. Next, go ahead. Grant, go ahead.
Everybody else gets to take off their masks, and I do too. Look forward to that day. Again, I'm Grant Hennig. I live at 1116 Robin Road, and I am actually against this bond proposal. My fear is that, well, my original hope was that a new city council with new members and a new mayor would actually treat the city differently. The previous group passed a lot of debt for the city, and I'm very concerned that we're doubling our debt, doubling the amount of bond numbers with this proposal. And the voters are not having one say in anything. I know they've elected most of you, some were appointed, but I want to really, really emphasize that if you're adding 25 million to your bond level, it's not really 25 million, it's 50 million after you pay all the interest on it for 30 years for all of our kids and grandkids to pay. I'm very concerned about that. I was hoping that this council was going to stand up. We had one person that stand up, and I appreciate that. They said, no, this needs to go to the voters. I think it was questioned by Mr. Gonzalez as well, whether the voters were going to have a say in this, but evidently not. You are voting to move forward, and the bond rating has already been lowered for Elgin in the past few years. That's concerning. Our debt ratio is just way too high for what we're doing. Even the school, I support the schools, they go to us with bond elections when they need buildings and need land. I mean, the school does it the right way, but I don't know why the city can't do it the right way. If people want parks, if they want a new police station, put them on a bond. Get people to vote for it. I mean, should we be spending money on parks and buildings when most of our buildings are probably sitting vacant right now? Why are we gonna build new buildings when we're in a pandemic and most people are working from home? Seems like a waste of money at this time. I remember when I was a kid here, going to high school, graduating from Elgin High, the police station was in the Depot Museum. Has anybody been in the Depot Museum in the past year? Probably not. So why don't we repurpose some space like we've done here? Y'all got this awesome council diocese and space now with the new TVs and the internet and all the fancy stuff. So repurpose some other spaces. I think we have the space there besides tearing down stuff and rebuilding stuff with these bonds. So I really think you should reconsider this and really think what your voters want and not what you might want to see. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ed, would you like to take this opportunity here? State your name and address, please, and keep the comments about 3 minutes.
Ed Rivers, 229 Hickory Drive, Elgin, Texas. Not the Hickory Lane that y'all are gonna change the name of. Mine's gonna be a little different approach than the others. I'm not here to complain about anything. I am supportive of the bond. I feel like that the Elgin is growing and progressing, and we need to get ahead of the game and not fall behind the game. I consider it a privilege to work and own property downtown Elgin, as my father, my grandfather, and my great-grandfather did. I am very proud of what's happened to Elgin. I was on the council in 80 or 81 or 82 when we started the Main Street program. And it's still here, and it's still progressive. I'm on the Main Street board. I'm on the Historical Review board. I'm going to be chairman of the chamber next year again, unfortunately for the third time. I've lived here for 67 years, except for 4 years in college, 1 year in Houston, and 1 year in Austin. I'm here to speak specifically on the downtown Veterans Park, AKA Central Park. As the bond proposal is written currently, if I misquote, then please excuse me as far as the terminology. Right now, there is $100,000 in the line item for the downtown park. There's also money for the other two parks in town. There's $500,000 as a line item for the alleys downtown. I was in the Historic Review Board meeting this morning, and by my asking the question to Molly Alexander, pretty much, she expressed her support of the park, even though she has water that comes in the back of her building when it rains real hard. She says we put up sandbags and it works. You have a little drainage work and we can make it work. So I'm here to speak. I hate to rob from one and to give to the other. I feel like that the park, I can remember in the park there was a concrete slab down there. I can remember seeing kids roller skating down there. And I can also remember that there were Mexican dances down there. I think Ron said they were fiestas or whatever you call them. And it was fun. I think that when you say a central park, it is central. It's in the middle of all the wards. It is for everybody in the city of Elgin. The new carts facility has been built. I think it's a $1.6 million project. It's going to have public restrooms, which is going to save the city a ton of money by not having to put public restrooms in.
Ed, we're gonna have to.
Okay, so I support it. I think it does a lot for the kids. I did it for 3 minutes. A lot for the kids, water parks, music venues, skating rinks. But one more thing. I support the skateboarding because right now they're skateboarding in front of my office. Usually they're pretty kind. Sometimes they're not real nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I believe that's all the public comments on the bond proposals. Okay.
We to go ahead, Mayor? We've got a report and presentation, kind of an update tonight on our CO discussion that we had talked about last time, our proposed debt funding that we want to clarify, provide some more information on a few things, and then we're going to have more detailed discussion about a handful of the projects that we've been requested to do so by some of the council members. As you recall, we had a little bit of confusion on the final number at our last meeting, which the total number of the projects listed and proposed by the staff is $24,062,118. When we, and this is the breakdown that we looked at our last meeting, but we had a little confusion at the end about the exact number that I just wanted to clarify tonight. Because the council had to vote to specifically stipulate what projects would or wouldn't be included in that amount, that's why the number changed slightly at the meeting. So once the council agreed that the project list included projects that totaled 24 million plus change, then we had to add into that number issuance cost, which are, depending again on what the final number, what the final list of projects will be, was about 890,000, and we rounded the 24,000 number up to 25, so that's what changed about those two numbers. So that's why the final number that the council approved as an intent to issue, not a final vote, haven't made a final decision on any of it, nor have they made a decision about what the final amount will be, but just wanted to clarify a little bit of confusion. But the 24,890 number now is the not to exceed number, no matter what projects we include or don't include. We've started that process, and so it can't be restarted, or that number can't go any higher without kind of restarting the process. And to mention too that for the City of Elgin, certificates of obligation are, like any city in Texas, are very routine, very standard financing mechanism that are absolutely necessary for growing cities like Elgin to be able to fund major capital improvements and projects, and particularly in a town like Elgin, as many Central Texas cities have faced in the last 20 years, where we have a substantial growth demands on us. So just to put the number in perspective, there's $24 million in capital projects that we're proposing. Our total annual budget for the entire city is less than $19 million. The general fund alone, where we have $9 million worth of projects included in this plan, our general fund budget, our entire budget for the year is $9 million. All the services we provide, from police, streets, parks, it totals $9 million a year. And then the utility fund itself, which we have about $14 million worth of projects proposed, the entire budget's only less than $6 million. So I just share that information to make it clear. These capital improvements that need to be done will have to be done eventually in Elgin, if not now. We simply can't afford those. Like most cities, you can't afford those big ticket items with budget limitations we have. So utilizing debt to make this investment in our infrastructure is the only way we can afford them. As we talked about last time, if approved and in its entirety as proposed by the staff, it'd be $9 million worth of general government improvements that could be afforded within the existing debt portion of the property tax rate. We project that there'd be no tax increase on the city's tax rate, on the debt portion of the city's tax rate, to fund these projects. And as we talked about last time, the $4.8 million in the water fund and the almost $10 million in the wastewater fund would, at this point, we're projecting very conservatively that it would result in about an $8 per month increase. I think in the end that number is going to go down. It could go down significantly based on the decisions made by council, but at this stage, it's important that we talk about those outside numbers, not to exceed numbers. I think another thing to keep in mind, as we've talked about with this plan, is that all these projects combined with other outside resources that we've developed over the years will actually result in over $42 million worth of projects, investment in our community, almost double the amount of debt that we'll be issuing. And this is the way that breaks down, that cities actually have some reserves earmarked for the sewer treatment plant that from prior bond issues of about $6 million. These projects include $6.3 million worth of private developer commitments to, excuse me, I've got to go back, to fund projects that, something the city's never done before and got that kind of commitment from the private development side. We've also gotten commitments of nearly $6 million in outside grant funding that will also be combined with these projects. And we're also hoping, waiting to hear about another grant that would be about $350,000. It'd be a minor portion. But again, that's how that breaks down, where this investment on the city's part, combined with outside resources or our savings, will actually result in almost double the investment in the community. Again, just keep perspective on the proposal that's being made. Actually, the vast majority of the entire debt issue involves 5 different projects, all of which that we have a pressing need for. I think everybody knows County Line Road is going to be our highest traveled road in the near future. That's a project where we have significant funds, matching funds almost from private developers out there to help us fund that. The building renovations that we've talked about for years, we're clearly out of space. We literally don't have the ability to fill some existing positions that have been put in the budget because we simply don't have office space for them. I think anybody that's been to the police station knows we need a new police station, so shouldn't have to talk about that. The water plant winterization that we're going to talk about a little bit later. That project alone, if the city, the council were to approve it, represents more than half of the entire debt issue for the water fund, just that one project alone. And then, of course, the treatment plant expansion is almost 80% of the total amount that we're proposing to be included in the debt issue. All of these projects have been part of and improved and included in the 5-year capital plan for a number of years, where we've had a number of public hearings, invited public input in that process. Certainly the wastewater treatment plant, as we talked about last time, has been discussed in Elgin for maybe 10 years from the first time it was first brought up. So, and I guess I want to say about the water plant too. In the 5 years that I've been with the city, we've talked about that every year, and the city council every year made the conscious decision to try to push that project off just to avoid a rate increase affecting our customers. But we've literally waited till the end here. We don't have any more time. We think we can't wait, certainly from the staff perspective, to get started on that plant expansion. So this is the list of projects we looked at before. I'll just mention we're going to focus in again on a handful of projects to give you some more details about tonight. But I'd encourage folks to, again, to review this report that's on our website. And also on the far left, you'll see that number there, 26 on Memorial Park or 24 on Pay Valleys downtown. That's the page number where each one of these projects are in our 5-year capital plan that's available, that's been available. We voted on it publicly numerous times. So you can get the explicit details about what each one of those projects are if you look in the 5-year capital plan. These are the projects that are listed under the water fund. We're going to talk about the weatherization, the water plant project a little bit later, but as you can see, it's the predominant project there. And then, of course, the wastewater treatment plant is obviously the big project that's included on the wastewater or sewer side. We did talk about our refunding, bond refunding that we'll be issuing, but this is a pretty straightforward situation, typical of any public entity that we can simply borrow money now at a much cheaper rate than what we had financed for before, so that'll save us some money. So moving on to the list of projects we want to talk about in a little more detail tonight. These, okay.
Let me just
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
say a quick statement. As the city manager goes over this, and as we speak among the council, I want everyone to understand that we're speaking to the public and we're speaking to the citizens of Elgin. And one thing that's misunderstood right now is it seems to be that the impression is all of this has been approved already. And that's not the case. The council tonight, we're gonna talk about, we have several meetings. Tonight, we're gonna talk about 3 or 4 or 5 of these items. We're not necessarily gonna hit every project that's there, because we have several meetings to do that. And the council's doing their homework, and they're doing their research, and week by week, we're gonna be hitting things, and we're gonna be hopefully whittling down what we see as we need to do and what we see as maybe we don't need to do. But it's important that the public understands that they still have a lot of input. They have the phone numbers and the emails of every council member here, including myself and including the city manager. And if you feel strongly about a particular project, pro or con, that's your opportunity to let us know. You know, this is something that I fully back. This is something that I don't think the city of Elgin needs. We have several weeks to work on this. And we're gonna have a public forum as well for the bond projects. But it's up to you guys to let us know as a council and as a staff what it is that you guys, if you feel strongly about something, what it is that you guys support or don't support. So that when we discuss among ourselves, we have that background and that information to go on. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, so the other information was basically an update for where we stand and some follow-up comments from before, but now we're going to get into some specific projects that we've been asked to provide a little more detailed information to council on tonight. Actually, the first 3 projects, the Thomas Park improvements, the Central Park, and the downtown alleys kind of meld together at some point, but Amy's going to lead the presentation on those 3 projects. And I would say for council, as far as this discussion goes, I would encourage it to be interactive, and if you have questions for Amy as she goes, feel free to express those and as we talk through these projects tonight. So, Amy, I'll just advance when you're ready.
Excellent, thanks so much. Hello, council and mayor and Tom. Thank you for having us make this presentation tonight. In terms of the information that I'm going to be sharing, these are proposals and projects that the Main Street Board, the Parks Advisory Board, and the Historic Review Board have been working on and talking about over a period of years. In particular, certainly some recent significant activity. As we start with this map, that illustrates for you the parks throughout the community. And we are going to be focusing on 3 this evening. But last year, in 2020, we did work on a master parks plan for the community and had a number of public input opportunities. They did conduct a survey. And so we've got some highlights here in terms of the demand for items based on that survey in particular. The Master Parks Plan is in its final draft phases with the Parks Advisory Board, and you'll be seeing that as a specific item in the future. Some of the items that scored particularly high were restroom facilities, splash pads, walking trails, and dog parks in particular. As we move to look specifically at Thomas Park, Thomas Park is an existing park. It actually was established in the early 1970s and had a significant Texas Parks and Wildlife grant project that made major improvements to it approximately 17 years ago. But there are some really dated facilities in this park. And so the restrooms are slated for upgraded fixtures, and the concession stand would be renovated. The basketball court area resurfaced, similar material to the resurfacing that we just did at Elgin Memorial Park recently. And those are all elements, and in addition to shade cover for the play area, that do reflect requests from the community, requests from the users of that park. But as you can see, there's items there that relate directly to the community surveys we conducted last year. When we look at
Amy,
Elgin,
can I jump in here just to clarify? No, we put the funding program together that we proposed to council as we presented last time. we basically put in a round number to correspond with what we're investing in Memorial Park. That's basically our concept. We wanted to try to do both. In Memorial Park, we have a very specific plan for the restrooms down there, and that's what that money will go for. But we didn't necessarily specify a specific plan yet that's been approved for Thomas Park, correct?
Right, these are
So
items.
what you're sharing tonight is, if the council just handed you this money, this is what you'd probably do with it. And some of these are obvious, but again, we don't want to suggest where these are set in stone with the staff either.
Right, these very much do reflect the conversations of the Parks Advisory Board, the community surveys conducted last year. And one of the other specific items here is to create an additional entrance and parking area for Thomas Park. Thomas Park has literally one small access off of one street. And we consistently hear from the community that it's a hard park to navigate. And if we were able to do this additional flag lot of parking area, which is park the land that we already own, that would make that additional access point, would provide additional parking, and would make it just that much more usable for the whole community.
And just to clarify, we're not exactly sure we can even do all these things for that money, correct?
Right, these are
Okay.
proposed ideas for that.
Thank you.
In Elgin Memorial Park, it is.
Well,
Uh-huh.
do you want to talk about Thomas any? Does anybody want to do that before Amy goes on?
I wouldn't mind making a comment about Thomas Park. I've been down there several times recently. To me, this is just my opinion, to me, the most important thing would be to regrade and resurface that walking track. From what I understand from talking to several citizens that use that, that seems to be the biggest thing. The grade that we use and the gravel that we use maybe needs to be a better grade. I know that the basketball court has been, the backboards have been redone and repainted, and the floor, a lot of the holes we had in the cement and stuff have been fixed, patched. So to me, the most pressing item would be, this is just my opinion, the most pressing item would be regrading the walking track.
I think we do have a couple more slides for this too.
Okay. Sorry.
Again, just a proposal if the concession stand were to get some updating, and that would include the restroom area.
But on that point, compared to Memorial, our restrooms there, we believe can be upgraded and improved, but they don't have to be replaced
Yes.
like we do at Memorial. Okay.
And I like the idea of that other land to be a parking lot also, because, yeah, when we have events there, it's really hard to navigate because the street is narrow and there's a lot of people coming out, and it would be very helpful to have more space. So
I
that would be.
absolutely agree with Mary, because it is not an easy park to get to. And especially if you have a lot of cars, you can't park, because you can't park on that street because it's way too narrow to try to do that.
Can anybody tell me where that area is that we're talking about?
Can you point to it, Amy? It's kind of hard to see. There's a.
Where's the entrance there,
Ron, can you
Amy?
see this?
You know what a concession stand is?
Mhm.
It's back on, you
Off
can get to
Madison.
it from that way.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
We have these little tracks
The
here.
street,
Across
Madison
that
is
little
narrow,
bit.
narrow, narrow.
Right there.
I would like to add something, Mayor. I know we talked a little bit about this, and you're right, Amy, over the years, this is a park that I will say has been upgraded somewhat since we've had an informal Parks Department again. They've done a great job just around town with not only upgrades, but just the upkeep. This particular area, of course, we're always working for, advocating for needs. This side of town, we have had opportunities working with the city recently and staff just to improve the look and feel of just some of the streets leading up to this park. And I think that certainly the bare necessities are important, but if we have opportunities for some upgrades, we should certainly work in that direction as well. I think that says a lot about that particular neighborhood, as well as gives those citizens an opportunity to experience and have some similar upgrades. And if we have the money to do it, we should do it. I also know that there's a great effort across the board to find the balance. You can't do everything at once, you can't hit every park at once, but I think if we're looking at any kind of rotation, that Thomas Park needs to be on the list.
For Elgin Memorial Park, we did receive the St. David's Foundation grant last year, and the city combined that with existing funding to make some really fantastic improvements in the park. And so the new playscape and new surface and shade cover and the new walking trail have seen fantastic response from the community, and it's an extremely busy park. The restroom facilities, however, are more than extremely dated and not sufficient for the community or for the park's demands. And so here there is a singular recommendation of new public restroom facility. So the existing structure, which is pictured on that slide, would be torn down, and a new facility would be put in its place to provide more restroom facilities, hand washing station, and so on.
Do I understand, Amy, that that is part of an obligation as a matching to the grant that we received?
In the overall project, with the St. David's Foundation project, we did talk about there being new restroom facilities at the park. And so with this one, in talking about Veterans Memorial Park, I am going to provide some additional context in terms of how we are where we are today. So in 2013 and 14, the community participated in the Sustainable Places project, and we were one of 5 communities in Central Texas that were selected for that planning effort. And it was a significant investment of time on both the city council's part and the community's part as they looked at what the future of the downtown district could look like and what sort of things could help the downtown district develop and evolve and be a much more successful component of the community overall. There were a number of recommendations from this plan. One was to acquire the Union Pacific-owned property that's pictured in this slide for future park development as this plan proposed. Another item was to implement a mixed-use zoning overlay for the downtown district. The city council implemented that. And it was also proposed that there be a carts facility with a transit stop and public restrooms in this downtown area, specifically in the plan area shown. And so on city council's part, that plan was adopted, including this general plan for this park area in early 2015. The zoning overlay was approved in October of 2015. And in the last several years, you have seen truly phenomenal reinvestment in the downtown district, driven in part by that zoning overlay, by this overall plan for what to be doing downtown, supported by significant investment from the Economic Development Corporation in its mega grants program, ongoing infrastructure investment from the city, and today, where this park might have seemed like a far reach in 2015, today it fits in with all of the overall investment that is happening downtown. And so if we can look at the next slide. So this is an aerial overview. The area that we're considering is from Main Street at Depot Street and Central to Avenue A. So it encompasses 3 blocks. If we look at the next one.
This is your next one.
This is a reference to the history of this park. So Veterans Memorial Park is the oldest park in your community. Established in 1913, it was a civic project of the Ladies Civic Club of Elgin, and it was intended to replace the lumberyard grittiness and uninviting section next to the railroad track and the freight depot. That park has continued all these years and is a very vibrant part of the downtown district. This is an opportunity to expand the park and take the components of the Master Parks Plan recommendations and the Sustainable Park Plan recommendations and see where those things fit together in terms of future investment for the community. And so if you think about that aerial space that we looked at from Main Street to Avenue C, to Avenue B, to Avenue A, I'm going to point out a few items here. And this is also perhaps a time to clarify. Mr. Rivers commented as a property and a business owner downtown that if there were a choice between investing in alleys or investing in this park project, that as a property and a business owner, he supports the park investment, greater dollars being put towards this park development than towards the paving of the alleys. And that is what we have heard consistently from property and business owners downtown, and it's what we're hearing from the Main Street Board and the Historic Review Board as well. So as we look at this, I'm just going to move over
Well,
here.
Amy, wait a minute. On that point, so we want to make clear to council, we're recommending that the council consider a slight funding change and devote the 500,000 that's currently proposed as being for downtown alleys and move all that funding over to the Veterans Park project. And that's based, that's the feedback we got consistently, as you said, that you've received from property owners, business owners downtown. That even in the example used before about people that have property that would directly benefit from the alleys being upgraded, they're telling us that they can wait on that. They'd rather this money be shifted over and invested wholly in the park. So we've heard that comment, and that's part of the staff recommendation that council make that change moving forward.
So you would have, you've got your existing Veterans Memorial Park, you have the existing Visitors Center and Chamber of Commerce in the historic freight depot with existing parking. The entire area is surrounded by proposed sidewalk, which is already funded through the grant we received from the Texas Department of Agriculture. That's a brand new grant that we just were awarded in the last couple of months. So all of this sidewalk is that existing project. The park, new park features would include a plaza with a proposed water feature, an events lawn, a playscape. Then you would have the dog parks from Avenue B to Avenue A, a skate park feature, a sensory garden, which is intended to utilize your smell senses in terms of the sense of things that are planted, but also your auditory senses. It would have musical instruments essentially that are playground musical instruments, and it is more of an all abilities element of the park. The entire area would have fencing along both sides of the railroad tracks so that you would be addressing that safety component. And the Carts project is already under construction at Avenue C and Central, and that's a project that includes public restrooms that the city of Elgin will maintain and operate, but that the infrastructure investment of creating them is being provided by CARTS, the Capital Area Rural Transit System. And then you would have additional parking that could be used as event space with this CART station. And so you are able to take property that really, it can't be utilized for building structures and make it into a vibrant space for the whole community that provides all these needs from the various park elements. It also ties in with the investment that's happening downtown and additional investment that's still proposed for the downtown area. I guess the last point that I would share here is that we mentioned the sidewalk grant and the CARTS partnership in the restrooms. We would intend to, while you could make basic phase 1 improvements with the funding from the bond, we would hope to be successful with grant writing and fundraising to leverage those dollars, working with the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department and other funding agencies to try to really maximize the additional investment and be able to implement more of the park than just phase 1. But phase 1 would be that space across from the police department, which is this area here.
Yeah, so let's be crystal clear about that. With the $600,000, this is the master plan for the Veterans Park, what you're showing here tonight. But for this level of funding, phase 1, we're not positive we can get all of phase 1 done for $600,000. That's why you're needing to get grant money. But that's what the funding would be for, correct? Okay. All right, well, I guess that's all we have really on the parks. Amy's the park person, so if anybody council has any more questions for her or comments.
I'd like to start out with that, I've not made it a secret that I am very pro doing these projects for the Veterans Park. When I was on the council before, 8 years ago, we talked about it, but it was just a dream, basically. We have an opportunity, this is an opportunity for the city of Elgin. When we hear, well, we don't have anything for the kids to do, and we hear that constantly, and the people that are moving into Elgin, as has been stated before, they're looking to see what we have to offer. And if we can say we have a splash pad for you to bring your younger kids to go run around, we have a skate park for your teenagers to go do their thing, and we have playscapes, and we have et cetera, it's an opportunity, and I hope the council sees, I had no idea at the time that the Main Street Board and the other Downtown Historic Review Board and maybe some of the other boards would actually push it as much as they seem to be pushing it as well. And for them to say, yes, the alleys are important. Here we have $500,000 for the alley, right? For the downtown alleys. But for them to say really as one voice, as important as that is, we would rather see this project started. I just think that says, it says a lot. And I asked the council, and of course I asked for your opinions, but I asked the council to see the opportunity that we have to do something downtown Elgin to make families want to come downtown. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yes, Sue.
I just have one question. Tom, with that amount of money to the alleyways, it was just paving and drainage, correct? There was no pipe changing out or anything like that?
Well, it was a similar thing. We do all we could for that money, but yes, that was the primary focus. I think as you remember, that this conversation actually started because in recent years, we have gone in and put in a new water line in a couple of the alleys and made those improvements. So the next step would be to a paving, but yes, the drainage and paving are the number one things. Of course, part of the challenge there we talked about too is, is it possible to put the overhead lines underground? Is it, what would we do with all the trash cans back there? There's more questions to that. So this project, frankly, was just on the alleys was really to just take that next step to see what we could get done. And yeah, the 500,000 was kind of a round number, but yes, you're right.
That's right.
The primary focus was drainage and pavement.
Right, so that's my point. If I look at the alleys and knowing there's a drainage problem, but if we can't change out the clay pipes that have been there.
Right.
So why are we gonna just patch it and spend that money instead of waiting until we're good to replace everything that needs to be replaced and not just kind of put a surface on top of it?
Yeah, you're exactly right. That's the well said. That's the exact point. We reached a point where they certainly need to be repaid, but you're right. If we don't fix the drainage, then we'd be wasting our time. So, but I'm satisfied this issue was discussed with down Main Street. Everybody knows the issue, understands the issue, and basically that's why we got the feedback. Now, again, I think the whole point is, like with many of these projects, in 3 years, the city's going to be doing another CO probably and funding more projects then. So I think the feedback was, don't forget about the alleys. We'll still need to get them done, and it's the right goal. But Ed said it best. That the consensus was, if I have to pick one or the other, here's what we'd rather have.
Right, so if in 3 years we come back, you can really say, we know that these pipes all need to be replaced, and we'll do it all for money, but at least I don't feel like I'm throwing $500,000 on some pavement that you're gonna have to dig up to replace pipes.
That's right.
anyway.
Yeah, and I want to make clear, that doesn't mean we're just going to abandon the alleys now too, either. We'll continue to maintain them the best way we can, but yes, the drainage problem we talked about, that only gets solved with a major project, but we'll continue to keep them as good a condition, I think, as they have been. But you're right, it's not smart money for the city now to invest a lot back there until we're ready to go the whole 9 yards.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments about the parks?
Here's your chance, guys. I know several of us have been contacted by different people.
Well, we can come back to it again, obviously, sometime in the future if we need to talk some more. But we were asked too about the two main building projects we have included in the proposed plan. That's for new city hall building or annex and to renovate the police department building. These are our two projects that kind of came late to the party. I'll talk a little bit about the proposed police department expansion now. On the heels of Amy's conversation, or explanation about the Veterans Park. I think that's one thing that we all need to keep in mind moving forward with, as we consider these projects as standalone projects, the park by itself, the police station by itself, the Poth building, which is part of this mix too, the sidewalks, all might, as standalone projects, might not work for us or might not be cost effective. But once you consider all of these things could happen at the same time, we have a chance to change this whole corridor and basically extend the downtown area and improve the whole block because we're the main property owner. The police station, truthfully, the council and staff have talked about for years. It's obviously a way outdated police station. It barely accommodates the staff we have now. And as we want that department to continue to grow and upgrade its services, we can only do that with a new building. As I think the council is aware, we had a new buyer come in about a year ago and purchase the cotton oil mill property back here. And we had staff engaged in fairly lengthy deliberations with that new owner about the possibility of building a whole new facility over there, public safety building, a city hall, a city complex that would serve the city for years to come. But truthfully, it just got to be too expensive, and we couldn't afford that. And we also came to the conclusion that Elgin's just not in. Elgin may grow to 40 or 50,000 people based on the growth that we have projected. But we can't afford to make that leap today to build that public safety building, to build that municipal building that will serve the city for the next 40 years. Typically, you try to do that and think about that far ahead. So this concept is based on an idea that we'd kind of make a half step. We have to get new space, we have to get new improved space, but keep our investment at a minimum now, and that'll serve the city for maybe the next 10 years, and then the city will be in a different financial position where they can afford something bigger. So the truth is, it was out of discussion with this council that frankly I hadn't thought about much about the idea of expanding the police department in its present location. But the more we talked about it, the fact that we own the whole property in the block, that we're investing in the Poth building to make that change as well and upgrade that area, that it seems only logical that we would seriously consider just expanding in place for the police department itself. Obviously, that concept would work better. They can continue to work out of the existing building while we're building the addition next door and then move over, and then that wouldn't disrupt operations. But beyond that, frankly, on both of these buildings, there's not a whole lot more analysis that's been put into this. We basically included this at a total of about $4.5 million in the CO to allow for both of those projects to get built. But the first step we'll take, if council approves that funding, is to immediately get into hiring an architect, engineer, and put the designs together for both buildings. What's kind of unique about our present situation here at City Hall is that the property immediately next door, it's at east. Is that east? Joe Parton says it's Elgin East, so east of our city. Yeah, going that way. The old gas station is on the market now, and we did a quick analysis of that, and if we could purchase that property for a reasonable price, we're confident we could put a 2-story, 10,000 square foot building on that site for about $2 million, and would serve the city quite well with all the overflow we now have with administrative offices and that we're going to have as we grow in the future. And by placing a building in that location, then as this diagram shows, we'd almost create a little bit of a small campus of city buildings here together, between the library, the existing city hall, and this annex building. This would also address one issue that I know has always been a concern of folks of, we have such a unique historic city hall building, while it may make sense for us to go out and build a much more functional building, we'd hate to, I know there's been an expressed concern about the city leaving that building behind or it not being the city hall anymore. So this would be also an idea that would enable us to continue to keep that kind of landmark historic building as part of city offices. But beyond that, those are the basic details we have available about those two building projects.
Council, anybody have any questions or comments concerning either the addition to the police department or the City Hall Annex? Yes,
I'm sorry.
yes.
Did you find out any more about the tanks?
I did not. That'll be, I mean, truthfully, acquiring that sign for a reasonable price will be our first challenge. So that's an issue that would obviously have to be addressed.
Anybody have any comments? Again, and it's been mentioned earlier, anybody who has ever stepped foot in that police department building, you almost want to turn around and walk back out. I feel for our officers that work there.
I worked there. I had a bat come flying out of the ceiling at me.
Okay, yeah. And that's probably not the worst thing you saw when you were there.
No, sir.
So, I guess the point I'm making is, the police department cannot, I mean, we know that we're getting more citizens. As we get more citizens, we know we're gonna have to expand our police department. We cannot continue to work in a building where we have tiles that are falling from the ceiling, where we have water coming in at locations where the water shouldn't be coming in, et cetera, et cetera. So, Council, I hope that you, when we look at this and we look at the list of projects, that we realize the importance of the addition to the police department, to expanding the police department building. And the same thing with the city hall. There's no doubt Elgin is unique because we have a city hall that used to be somebody's house, basically. And that was fine when Elgin was a town smaller than what we're gonna be here very soon. So we don't want to leave the city hall building. It's like Mr. Mattis said, it's important that we still stay to the city hall, but we're gonna need an annex. We're gonna need more room than what we have currently. So to me, again, those are two projects that are certainly worthwhile. And I believe if you guys have a comment, I want to hear about it. It can't be just Sue and I talking here.
Mayor, I think that we've supported it in the past. I mean, it is in the 5-year capital plan, so we have approved that and looked at that every year. So I think what you're saying is right and on target, but certainly I think the support and the same sentiments have been there and probably continue to be there, especially as we continue to grow.
Yes, Forrest.
As a matter of logistics, can you go back to the police department visual, please? So you're talking about adding an L-shaped building, is that correct? Looking at this, right?
We remodel the existing building is the concept now and add to that.
Okay, so, but it would come all the way across Depot down to the post building? And then parking for the police officers, would that be in the back of that?
Yes, right.
Where the yard is now?
Right.
Any thought of incorporating the post building into that? I know we have it earmarked for something else, but any
Yes.
opportunity to anchor the police department in that post building remodel?
Yeah, I have a thought about it. That'll be part of the mix, frankly. What we've talked about is, again, even the money that we've invested in the post building, or we're prepared to, we're on the verge of. We've talked about if council's agreeable to funding this idea, we'll probably delay that project to see how it can blend together. Because I've even got Amy to agree that if we were to come up with a plan for the use of the entire area, that it's conceivable that we could come up with an idea which would mean maybe we don't redo the POF building and we just put it all in a new building. But we also think there's a way that we can continue and preserve that building and add the police station to it. So this is all part of the conversation we'll have once we get into the planning. And I guess on that part, I would just say this for everyone's edification, that, again, part of this process is for us to talk about these details of what we intend to do with the projects, what the plan will be for the project. But in the end, if the council proceeds with these projects as presented, the ordinance itself will just say that we're committing $4.5 million to building improvements. So the point is that still would give council, everybody, a lot of flexibility later to decide what exactly are we going to build and where are we going to build it. So even in this case, so I think this is more, the question is more about, do you believe we're going to need more building space for both the police station and city offices at some point in the next few years? So whether or not these exact ideas come together, the council would still have the flexibility to have that money available to invest in a different way, but just as long as we did building improvements somewhere. So yes, you're right, the POF building is now with this and the whole project, that starts to be a little bit different conversation too. But we've got ideas about how it can stay, but we've also got ideas about how it might be better used just to fill up the whole block with a new building and not preserve that building. Did that answer your question? Yes. That was a long way around. So.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Mayor,
Yes.
I just want to add, well, nothing to add, I just want to comment that I'm in agreement with what's been proposed. That's why I hadn't said anything. I didn't have anything against it.
That's fair enough, okay.
All right, well, the last part of our report tonight then is to walk through the winterization, the water treatment plant wells and distribution system. Council received a detailed report from me last week discussing these items, the details of these items, I guess I should say, but I wanted to walk through them fairly quickly because it's obvious. I think the main point about this issue for us is that, it's another item that came kind of late to the party when we were organizing and putting together, obviously, this plan. But we certainly heard, the council heard from a number of citizens after our storm event that suggesting that we should consider investing in our infrastructure to try to prevent a similar issue from happening again in the future. So this is what this analysis is, and it's important to understand that, as the council knows this, that the initial presentation of the COs included a $2.5 million, just a placeholder number, so that we consider while the staff was completing its analysis about what would be involved in creating an independent power source for our entire water and wastewater system. But it's important to understand this is not the staff's recommendation. It's simply an analysis of what it would take to accomplish that task. Obviously, the shortcoming of our system in this recent event was illustrated by the fact that we don't have independent power generators at every step along the way for both our water and wastewater treatment system. I feel compelled to say again, as we've said all along, that our water system failed. We did not get water to our citizens here. Our water system didn't fail. The reason people ran without water is because we went without power for 36 consecutive hours at the treatment plant. The water system doesn't even require electricity all the time to provide water, but it's the fact that we went 36 consecutive hours with no power that caused the catastrophic situation that we had. So as we walk through this, or I'm going to have Bo come up here and answer any questions you have about the specifics of this plan, but overall, the basic thing to keep in mind is that one of the things that we talked about before, and we obviously ran into with this issue, was we don't have an independent power generator at the water treatment plant. That would require a massive investment, a huge generator. It can be done, but it would require a huge generator to be built out there, and it's not the kind of, it's not, and you can't put a generator that big on a trailer and haul it out there if you need to. So the only way we could have a generator out there would be there. But it's important to keep in mind all along the way, for both water and particularly wastewater, there are a number of mechanical systems that have to continue to work if we're going to promise in some way that we're going to be able to keep water service together. So I think one way I would say that is that had the opposite happened, and we had all the power we wanted at the plant, but we had no power inside the city limits for 36 consecutive hours, the same result would have happened. We would have been able to push water as far as the Pistol Hill tank. But without generators and power source at every other pumping station along the way, we still would have run around of water in town. So that's why it's important to understand, that's why this cost number is so big, that if we're gonna have a system that has independent power generation every step along the way, then that can't be achieved by just putting a generator at the plant. There has to be lift stations at every generators at every pump station and at every lift station. So with that in mind, our analysis to achieve that came at actually a larger number than the 2.5 million. So our projected cost to achieve that for both the water and wastewater systems would be about 3.2 million. I do want to say one thing, that the wastewater treatment plant project, I guess we talked about this last time, already has a new generator programmed into that, so that one will already be funded as part of the wastewater treatment plant. But that's the cost projection at this time to achieve that. And then I assume the council had a chance to review these spreadsheets about the details. If you have any, Bo's here tonight, if you have any specific questions about this or part that I didn't cover, it's also important to keep in mind that part of this cost is not only the acquisition of the generators, but then there's obviously costs associated with upgrading our existing systems to accommodate those generators. So that's an additional cost that's associated with that. And then, of course, with this kind of investment across the board in generators, frankly, that'll incur annual operating costs that are going to be fairly significant if we have to keep up and maintain all these different generators. So, Bo, come up to the... So, again, I just want to make clear, this isn't a staff recommendation to do this. At the same time, I would say it's certainly not a mistake. If the investment is there, if folks want us to assure that we have these systems and their capability to run even when we lose power like we did, this is the best way to do it. The important thing is, you can't ever say that we'll guarantee that'll never happen again. It's still mechanical systems that can break down, but certainly have generators at every spot along the way will greatly enhance our ability to keep those systems running. So, Bo, I don't know if do you have any general comments beyond that, or?
No, I mean, the big thing for council is I can kind of run through y'all's system from a water standpoint or sewer standpoint if you're not familiar with the lay of the land of actually how water gets into this city of Elgin. A lot of people probably think it's just coming from a single source, and that's really not the case of how the system is laid out. But I can definitely answer any questions you might have on what's been presented to you as well.
And I would say again, just to emphasize the point, remember that the number in the proposal that's included for water system improvements is about 4.8 million. Well, 2.5 million of that is this project. So, so if we're concerned about the rate increase, this project would be the one that would really drive that rate increase the most. But that's the system we're in. If the customers want to have it, we can certainly provide it. I would say too, I think one interesting point, Bo, that you've made that we want to make sure we talk about is that lift stations are a little different in sewer lift stations, and although the city hadn't done that previously, that moving forward, every private developer that puts a lift station in is required to put a generator in.
Right.
So at least we've got that in place where we're making sure that the private developers are adding those too. We didn't always do that, so we're left with Elm Creek's a good example of one, and others that we'd build differently today if we could, but.
Yeah, the most recent developer lift station would be Saratoga Farms, which if you've been out there, it's a very large site. There's a generator, so that is a requirement that was changed many years ago that puts the onus and the burden on the developer. Obviously, the city, that's a decision that council makes to include a generator for those city-funded lift stations, which isn't always the case because it is a large component and it's also a large cost at each individual lift station. So those are kind of judged differently as you go in. Central lift station would be one that does not have a generator that's sitting there, and the FM 1704 does not have a generator that is sitting out there due to cost constraints. But I can take you guys through, it's kind of unique with the wastewater, a little bit different than the water. The way that you guys' standard design is essentially we require in every single facility with the exception of one on the lift stations, it already has what we call quick connects that are there so that you could pull up a portable generator, connect it directly to the lift station, throw a switch, and the pumps will start running again and you're running it off of a portable generator.
And is that this portable generator cost that's here?
That is one that we've basically said, the worst case scenario, if we bought one large portable, it could be used at every single facility within the city, wastewater or water, with the exception of the plant, essentially.
Perfect.
Another key component of y'all's standard design that's a little bit unique is we also put in a quick connect, which, let's say you can't get a portable generator out there, or you only have one and multiple lift stations go down because they're on the same grid of power, is you can literally go out there with a diesel pump, put it down into the wet well, do a quick hard pipe connection, and then that'll still send the wastewater through the normal system like anything else. And the city actually has some diesel-powered pumps that you guys do that in cases of emergencies. Very similar to Elm Creek, when it went down, we rented large pumps, but we still pumped all the water to the treatment plant through the existing infrastructure. And so that's a standard design that you guys have on the lift station developer or city funded lift stations that go in. So for all the lift stations in the entire city, there's only one that doesn't have the ability to take on a quick connect essentially from a generator. And all of them have, after we did some alterations to the LCRA design, all of them have that ability to have the quick connect, worst case scenario.
Okay, so here's my concern. During the winter storm, there was a tree that knocked down a power line. Over a period of time, that stopped us from being able to provide water to the city. What is it gonna take to get a massive generator put in place at the water treatment plant?
At the water treatment plant, you're probably looking, if you were to build a generator for the plant, it's not only the plant, you also have the booster station there. Those are two separate components that run. You could be running the plant and the booster station not running. You could be running the booster station and the plant
So
not running.
would it be two generators?
One larger one, they're close enough together.
Okay.
And then you also have a water well that's there, and if you're gonna build a generator large enough for those, there's a water well that's close enough to tie into. A few of the issues there, we estimated about $1 million for just that generator there. A few of the issues are, you got Sandy Creek that comes through there. You guys are in the process of $1.5 million treatment plant upgrade to try to raise everything above the floodplain. That generator would also have to be well outside of the floodplain, which means it's gonna be on the top of the hill, and you're gonna be running a bunch of lines, which is gonna really drive up the cost in order to power the plant. Even if you had that generator there, you could still lose power at Pistol Hill until that upgrade is done with this generator and be out of water at the city at a later date. You could still lose power out at the wells, well 14 and 16, and 15 would not be able to keep up even though it was on a generator. Eventually it would not be able to keep up with demand and you could run out of water. The water system, and that's what I was gonna take y'all through real quick, if you got the time.
Take us through it.
So currently the city has 3 active water wells. Waterwell 14 and Waterwell 16, the most recent one installed about a year ago, are miles outside away from the plant. They feed in through an 18-inch transmission line that brings water in to the plant where it's essentially treated. You have two different treatment plants that are right there next to each other. And then you have one other water well that's on a different system that brings water into the plant that's right there at that location, water well number 15. So each one of those three components, you have to have water pumping from the wells in order to treat it, in order to put it into the city. Once it goes through the plant, it goes to, you have two large ground storage reservoirs, two different booster stations there. One booster station pumps to Pistol Hill, which is just on the outskirts of town out here, up on a hill. And another booster station pumps directly to Elgin Oaks, which is a completely independent system away from the rest of the city and has its own elevated tank. So there's essentially two booster stations you would have to hook up as well. The water goes all the way to Pistol Hill. From there, there's another booster station that essentially puts the water into the city system and into the elevated tanks that's what generates your water pressure. Those in the winterization, those at the higher elevations were the last people to start seeing water come through their faucets, and we literally could predict it by the hour when people would see water as those tanks started to fill back up. So with the water, it's a little bit unique just because you could lose power along any one of those systems, essentially, and you could run the risk of being without water. Now, there's TCEQ requirements, there's redundancy design, and the amount of water that should be in the system at any given time, the pressure, how much water it takes the city to drain its supply if both tanks are full of water and operated, which in this case, one of them was out of service for the leak. But essentially, if you were to try to say you're gonna put a generator, you're basically putting a generator at each well at the treatment plant, which right now you'd be sizing it for that. You could try to oversize it, which would increase the cost. We know you're within a 5-year or just outside the 5-year of looking to upgrade the size of that water plant, just based on residents coming in and service. And then Pistol Hill, the city was fortunate enough, you guys did get that grant recently awarded, and that does include a generator as part of that grant in that construction phase. It's an outage that, in this case, we would not, we have a recommendation, we talk about a portable generator, you just take it out there to any one of the components with the exception of the plant. And generally, you guys should have enough storage at any given time in the system to last quite some time before you actually go out of water. And that was evident. You guys were without power for quite some time before the boil water notice actually went into effect. You had already been out.
So Bo, the question, I guess what I'm leading to is, I understand that it would be great if we had generators at all the lift stations and all the booster stations and et cetera, et cetera. But during the storm, one tree knocked down one line. And that was the start of it, because we didn't have problems further down the line, or did we?
And what I was saying is, each one of those systems is fed from different lines. It's not one singular line. So that first line that you lost power out at the wells.
Right.
You still had power at the plant. So you were treating water and still sending water into the city. Problem happened is then you ended up losing power at the plant. You got power back on at the wells, but then you couldn't actually treat the water that you were sending in. So it's not like, if it was one tree in one location and we could put one massive generator and it provide water, that would be great. The problem is there's multiple lines that could go down by a tree, and any one of those knocks down the rest of the dominoes that you almost end up having to put a generator at each location if you really wanted to meet the intent of, we have backup power at all times at all facilities. And
Would you rate the one at the water treatment plant the most important, though? Or
no,
not
because,
necessarily?
yeah, if water treatment plant is only running when the wells are running. So if your wells stop running, you have this generator at the water treatment plant, there's nothing to treat because there's no water coming into the plant.
But the one, for the wells, if we purchase the one that you can put in a trailer and drive around,
You could always guarantee that you have water into the system. So that
Wait.
is-
What do you mean by that?
if he's saying you do both, then you do
Oh,
the
do both.
trailer.
I
yeah,
thought you meant just the
You do the
trailer.
trailer and you take it out to the wells.
But the
you would-
trailer itself won't
No.
power the plant.
No.
No, it's not big enough for the plant.
No, but the trailer that is estimated in here, we've looked at the wells, the motor sizes are around 200 horsepower. That's a trailer-mounted generator that staff could be able to pull out there that would be able to run a singular well at any location. Because you can lose well 16 power and still have power at 14, and vice versa, out there.
So Mr. Mattis had mentioned earlier that it's, or I don't know if you've heard this or if it's possible where Encore brings their power in on their line, that we could ask, I guess, to see if they could bring power in from
Yeah, that,
two different lines?
in my experience, that's more typical, that even though you're in the same system, they'll basically bring essentially a power line from two different directions.
Two different substations.
So that if one goes out, then, that's something the power company typically does, and I think clearly that's a conversation we need to have with Encore about how they can do that.
It's a little, when you're talking wastewater, that's required by the state. You either have the generator or you have two different feeds coming into the plants from two different substations. When it comes to water treatment, that's not a requirement because it's either surface water or you guys are on groundwater because of the wells that you guys are pulling water from. You do have that treatment, otherwise you get water that may be safe to drink, but it doesn't look all that great. Color, smell, those kinds of things is really what your treatment plant is taking out, is that color and smell, that manganese and sulfur smell out of the water. That's what your treatment plant is ultimately pulling. That would be one of those things to reach out to Encore and see the likelihood of where their next nearest substation is to start developing a plan to bring that into the plant. In all actuality, the plant is going to need to be expanded in the near future.
All right, let's not talk about that yet. Trying to get through this one. One thing I guess I wanted to add, we should add, since it's on this list, Bo, is that Waterwell 10, you can talk about that a little bit. It's non-functioning now, and it's another project that's in the list to be funded at $900,000. That'll greatly enhance our water production capabilities out there and help us in the future. I don't know if there's anything else to add to that.
Also with redundancy, because most likely redoing that gives you potentially at a different power supply where you always have one coming in. It's a benefit, but a curse at the same time. As you guys are pulling water, it's not like we have a plant or a well that's right here on the edges of the city. You're pulling out of the Creeds or Wilcox, and one of the benefits is you always have plenty of water in Elgin. When it comes to there's no watch how much water you utilize. There's not a bunch of stages because it's just your wells and the ability to pull from that. You guys have ample supply.
So council, I guess what we gotta consider here is, what are we willing to spend to make sure that we don't lose water to the city for any period of, any long period of time as happened during the storm. So not that we have to do anything tonight, but just something that we need to start thinking about is, do we want a full weatherization? Could we, to me, that if we don't do something with the water treatment plant generator, then we've done nothing, basically. Then another windstorm could knock another power line down, and we would be maybe in the same situation. Is that correct?
Potentially. One of the big issues with the quote-unquote power loss was accessibility, just getting out there to fix the lines. It wasn't about, the city staff got the call when Encore was dispatched, and to the point that Encore's trucks got stuck on the road and could not actually get to putting power back on. Ultimately, generators, same thing. You're gonna have a generator running, someone is gonna have to get out there to refill it with diesel. If you're talking the amount of outage that you guys had, someone from city staff would have had to brave it and get out there with vehicles. So there's not a full safe methodology out there based on what we said that, like Tom said, that we could guarantee. Obviously, having a standby generator there helps with that, but there is the associated, you guys went through it a little bit, is there's a lot of O&M to make sure that thing works when it's supposed to. And Elgin wasn't the only town. We had a lot of clients that had standby generators that just did not fire up, and they could not get them going even though they were sitting there.
Can I make one comment?
Thanks.
When you were on the city council the last time,
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Okay.
that city council had the option to put a generator in, but because of funding, it was passed. And so then we didn't have water. So I feel like we should learn from that because of what we went through, and we should do something. I have little of no faith in Encore currently, and I hope that we still do have a conversation with them. And I do think that there needs to be a second substation fee coming in, even though it's not required by law.
You talking about power?
But I still think if we don't do something to get a generator there, whenever that happens again, then, first time shame on you, second time shame on me. It's happened to us before, and I really don't want to see it happen again.
Can I,
Yes.
I was just wondering, because like with the Pistol Hill, a generator was included in that grant. Are there possible grant funding for some of these other projects that we could look into?
Not I'm aware of, not for a standalone generator. It's more like that, if it's part of a project.
I haven't heard that FEMA has said we're gonna come out with a grant related to the Texas weather incident where cities can apply for the generators or anything of that nature. Not at this point.
I want to say that to be clear, I think we're always looking for grants. Staff is always looking for that, and I think we have a really good history, the staff does, with Bo's help, of getting all the grants that we can, and as we mentioned, that Pistol Hill one's, I don't think I ever gotten a $5 million grant that only had a 1% match. That's an incredible accomplishment for us to do a critical part of the system, so we're always looking for that. So we'll keep our eye open. With this event, maybe it will come out. Maybe there will be some money available. I'm sure I assume aren't your clients having similar conversations now? Everybody's talking about,
Elgin's not.
We should have,
Standalone boat here. There's lots of clients, and so
Well,
we
we-
still have some clients that are still struggling with it, asking for emergency storage, still trying to get their systems back up.
I think we all should have invested in the generator business about 2 months ago, and we'd probably be doing really good right now.
And can I ask you a question about? Is any preference as far as backup generator versus an additional line from a substation?
I think from an engineering standpoint, you're always gonna ask for additional line from a substation, just because it's a steady current. Two substations going out is almost next to unheard of as far as that. And that also goes in because the second current line, there's 0 O&M. I mean, you have another line that's essentially coming in, that switches on and off, they'll probably rotate. You probably pay a little bit more for that feed power that comes in, but there isn't a physical O&M that you gotta keep up with. And a generator is another mechanical piece of equipment. I mean, it does have a shelf life at some certain point that would require replacement.
There's no question that's a better alternative, more cost-effective, better alternative.
So Tom, you're going to start the conversation with Encore on that?
Sure.
Thank you.
so can I work through the numbers that
Yep.
we have here, the 3.14 million? If I understood you right, you said that in the wastewater upgrade, that there is a generator included in that?
And the cost that council approved already.
Okay, in the $9.5 million upgrade to wastewater, there's that. So this $1.1 million that's listed here
That
is
is,
actually baked into that?
no, the 1.1.
That was the water plant.
Yeah, for the lift station for wastewater system, the 1.1, that was assuming that the council would be like, we wanna go put a new generator at every single lift station. That doesn't happen.
Okay.
That's where that number comes from.
Wait a minute, we don't have a number listed for the wastewater plant.
Well, you do.
You got
Wastewater
wastewater
generator is
generators.
$1.1 million.
Go back.
37.
One more.
Page 37.
That's the water plant.
You have 1.1.25
Where's water at the bottom?
Go back, go up.
water.
Go one more up.
All right, I'm sorry.
One more, Tom. That
There.
Yeah, there it is.
the
Oh.
wastewater generator.
Yeah, that's a typo, that's not. That's wastewater generators for the other system. not the plan itself.
No. It's,
That,
that would, the 1.1.
on this spreadsheet, if you add up all those there to the right, that's the 1.1 million. That's for all the lift stations and, well, those are all lift stations, right, Bo?
That would be having a generator at every single lift station, so at
Right.
Carver, at Larson, at Savannah, Westwind doesn't have one, adding one to Central, adding one to FM 1704, going in and doing a standalone. And again, that was based on council's direction of what would it cost to put a generator there. I think we've somewhat answered that, you know, from staff standpoint of, they all have quick connects already for portable. And the size of those lift stations, as, with the exception Elm Creek already has a generator that we know operates, you can easily get a portable generator to those facilities and hook it up. Or you can, in some cases, like Savannah, you literally can go out there with the back truck and keep up with it for any kind of extended power outage.
So if we were gonna do the portables, how many of the portables would we need to ensure that?
35,000. There's only one lift station that does not have the quick connect currently on it. It would be a panel switch out. Every other lift station actually has a manual transfer switch or an automatic transfer switch already as part of the electrical components.
Okay.
Let me jump ahead on one thing for us, maybe where you're going there, if you don't mind. If the staff were going to make a recommendation on this, our recommendation for a minimum would probably be about 500,000 for this project, which would include the purchase of the trailer lift station and the funding to do all those interconnects. So I don't know if that's where you're going, but we think we can buy the portable and do all the interconnections so that we can have quick connect to that new generator for maybe less than that, but around 500,000.
But then go ahead and get the generator or the dual connect
For water.
for the water.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. At a minimum, we would want that much to at least be able to buy the portable generator and do the
But
connections.
for the lift stations.
But then between there and the 3 million is what you guys can decide.
So these are staff projections for us to look at, depending on how far we want to go with,
Cost estimates, that's right. That's right.
how far we want to go with this project.
Yeah, and we want to make clear, like with most of it, we're not compelled or required legally to do any of it.
Correct.
Any of this 3.2 million.
Correct.
Anybody else have any questions or comments for Bo, or just comments in general?
And then, again, like Tom said, these are just the numbers of what council asked us, hey, worst case
Right.
scenario, if we wanted to do everything, what would it be? That's kind of what we're presenting to you.
Okay. Yes, Susie?
What's the maintenance cost like for
So those are projections just based on what we've talked with other, that's essentially either additional staff time, and parts as far as keeping the generators up and running. They can't just sit there on the shelf until the day you need it. You actually have to exercise them, turn them on, make sure that they're actually switching on automatically, or they're switching on manually, refilling them, with gasoline, or if y'all went with natural gas. But a lot of that, and then ultimately, if it's not staff time, you're bringing in an outside vendor that's making the rounds to each one of those. And so obviously, the more you have, the more that cost would be to make sure that they're all fully operational.
But that's a significant cost. I mean, you can see just the number alone would tell you that we might have to add one full-time position or the equivalent of it just to keep up with all these generators and do the stuff Bo's talking about, or a maintenance contract for a similar amount, so it's fairly significant. All right, thanks, Bo. Mayor, that's the end of our report tonight. I'd be glad to try to answer any questions, or we can circle back to anything if anybody wanted to. I think as we've talked about before, it'll be my plan. We anticipate this same general agenda item being on every council meeting agenda between now and the May 18th final vote that's scheduled on the COs. So we'll be talking about it. We'll be ready to talk about it to some degree. As we've done with a couple of these reports, though, if council members can let us know a specific project or topic they'd like a more detailed report on at a future meeting, we'll sure be ready to do that.
So the email list that we have going, council, that several of us have already sent projects in that we wanted, well, actually, the projects that we talked about tonight, let's keep that going, because we have a lot more stuff to discuss. So please use that email list to let the city manager and myself know what we're gonna be talking about, which projects we're gonna be talking about next agenda.
Are you going? Okay. Next item under the manager's report is an update on on our neighborhood traffic and safety upgrades that we've been working on for a little while.
We have a public comment from Grant.
That was a lot of informational process. I was just gonna say, I mean, I don't disapprove of anything that's gonna protect traffic and safety for our citizens, for sure. But I guess part of my issue with some of these is we, again, as a city, allowed these things to happen and create the issue. So we allow roads to go in places they're not really designed to all meet up, and now we have to go back and try to fix them. So I just want, when y'all approve and look at things like the zoning changes on Main Street, or any neighborhood project where you're throwing hundreds of people on County Line Road, or on Claus Lane, or on 1100, or on Albert Velker, or wherever you're looking at projects, I don't want to see that we have to go back and fix them as traffic issues. And you see that on most of these new neighborhoods, and your Maris Lane, I mean, that is dangerous. I mean, something needs to be done there. But I think we need to try to prevent these traffic problems and neighborhood traffic issues before they happen. So as y'all look at other projects, let's don't have to go back and change street names because we already have a street that name. Let's just make sure we're looking at all these neighborhoods and not having another Hickory Lane being approved in Upper Elgin Road, in the new neighborhood. So that's my concern, is we're going back and fixing stuff that we, as a city governing body, allowed to happen. So that's all I had to say.
Now, this item is for, as I said, an update, just a quick update on 4 projects that the council's been talking about for a while. We just wanted to let you know the Houston Madison Street project, we're very close to having all the engineering studies done and the analysis done there for the placement of the stop signs. We think that'll support the placement of those signs as we've discussed previously, and that action, we would hope, will be coming back to council soon to formally improve that. On the Hillside Old McDade Road area, we're in the final stages of moving forward with that project. This is one, if you recall, we're still between the staff and the city engineer trying to figure out how much of this that we can do ourselves, this improvement with city forces, as opposed to contracting it out. But we're close to pulling the trigger on that as well. This project we think is going to cause, at the end of the day, if we can do that using city forces, we're still out of pocket. It'll be approximately $25,000 for the supplies and materials. The South Avenue A, these last 2 projects, we've had ongoing discussions and meetings with TxDOT as both of these projects affected TxDOT right away. So actually on the South Avenue A concept that we pitched to them, they're supportive of this and the idea where we're going to temporarily close off the one entrance lane, and they agreed with that concept to do it temporarily to see what kind of, if we get any improvement there for traffic flow. And so we'll be putting that together very shortly as well. The one project we continue to wait from more feedback from TxDOT is the Ramirez Road reconfiguration that we've discussed. Actually, the TxDOT staff, after we engaged them, their response back to us was that they too supported the concept presented by staff to basically convert the intersection to a cul-de-sac type concept, but At the same time, as we've said before, that didn't really surprise us. TxDOT, any DOT anywhere is always about anytime they can cut off a driveway or an access point to a roadway, they're typically in favor of that. But we're still trying to get clarity from them on just the ownership question of Ramirez Road and who owns it, who has jurisdiction over it, and in turn, who has maintenance responsibility for it. But we'll hope to have some kind of definitive feedback from them in time for our next meeting. And likewise, I can share with you too that part of our discussion and meeting with TxDOT was to have some good discussions about what we call here the Y down here at Loop 109, Hare Street coming into Main Street, about some possible improvements there that we've heard from folks about. So we hope to have more to report on that on the next meeting as well. Any questions about that? All right, the next, that's pretty much my report. Just wanted to mention that we're having our second clinic, COVID clinic pod down at the rec center starting next week, and we'll do that every month. And then I just got this picture today I thought you might enjoy. This is a picture of the interior of our water tower out at the Elgin High School that should have no leaks in it moving forward. So we're down to final inspection on that, Bo. Is that right? I still had a few details, but that project should be done soon. That's all I had on my report, unless anybody had any other questions for me about anything else.
Questions? Okay, let's move on to our consent agenda. Says all of the items on the consent agenda are considered to be self-explanatory by the council and will be enacted with one motion, 1 second, and 1 vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless the council member removes an item from the consent agenda and places it on the new business section for discussion and action. And I believe in this case, item number 2, Tom, right?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This, I recommend, we're going to withdraw the ordinance on item number 2 on the agenda. It wasn't until some conversation today that we realized that although we're not compelled to in any way, typically, I haven't done this before in Elgin, but when we've changed street names, I prefer to reach out to the property owners that would be affected by that and just to let them know that we're contemplating it so they can be clear before it has any impact. And I thought originally we didn't have any residents in the city, but we do have 6, David, is that right? There's 6 different city residents that would be affected by this, or properties that would be affected by this. So I think we should reach out to them. And just to be clear, these aren't names that we gave the city. These were ones that were filed with the county. And the county reached out to us and asked for this change. So it's not an error that we made, just something they've requested us to address. So, but anyway, I'd pull that off the consent agenda. So the only thing we have are the minutes tonight.
Do I hear a motion to pass the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
So the motion was made by Councilmember Vega, seconded by Councilmember Pinson to approve the consent agenda item number 1 as presented. Councilman Vega?
Vega, yes.
Prince, yes.
Ibis, yes.
Dennis, yes?
Frazier, yes.
Ramirez, yes.
Benson, yes.
Motion passes. Okay, we're gonna move to new business. Item number 1 under new business. Pursuant to Article 3, Section 13 of the Elgin Home Rule Charter, this is an emergency ordinance declaring that a public health emergency exists because of the worldwide COVID-19 pandemic, establishing requirements related to the posting of a public notice by commercial entities and the wearing of face coverings, and providing for a savings clause and repealing conflicting ordinances and resolutions. You want to give us background, Tom?
Thank you, Mayor. This is an item, council recalls, was on our last agenda. As you know, the city had passed this ordinance initially last summer to make it a requirement in the city to wear face coverings. Governor Abbott's recent executive order, I think it's 34, makes that no longer a requirement in Texas. And his order as issued frankly makes it legally problematic for any city on their own anymore to continue to enforce a face covering requirement in the city. So what we had talked about at our last meeting was just a couple days before, after the governor's order. Technically our ordinance runs out this evening, I think, tomorrow, maybe tomorrow, 24th. But we had talked about last time that if the council were committed to basically making a statement, this might be one way to do that, not the only way, but it's important to understand that even though the council could pass this ordinance and technically make it a law in Elgin, we'd be legally precluded from specifically enforcing face coverings. That's when we'd run into legal issues. So we talked about this 2 weeks ago, and at that time just said we put it on for this agenda to reconsider it.
Council have any opinions on whether the action or the inaction would be just let the ordinance run out tomorrow as it is? Governor Abbott has really precluded any other option, really. We could go a different direction with it, but we would not be able to enforce the face mask wearing. So, the council, do y'all have an opinion on which? Yes, Jessica.
I had just a couple questions for Tom. Tom, can you maybe describe a couple of, or what the complications or the complexities would be like if we moved ahead with keeping an ordinance? In other words, since we have a state mandate, so to speak, we know we can't enforce it, but what are some of the complexities, I think, for the city that we would face if we continued on?
Well, I think as long as we all understood and acknowledged we weren't going to enforce it, there wouldn't be any complexities. Technically speaking, the council can adopt this ordinance and say it's a rule here, but where we'd face legal challenge if we took any steps to enforce it. Now, it's fair to say, as council knows, that's really no different than what we've done since last summer when we first adopted the ordinance. It's been a rule, owner can. But if somebody comes into that business refusing to wear a face covering and call the police for help, then it's a trespassing issue. It's not a face covering issue, but that's something that can happen with or without this ordinance too. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question,
Well,
but
I mean,
I don't think it further action beyond council simply adopting this ordinance is where it gets complex and difficult for us. But as long as we don't do anything more than that, I don't think we're going to run into any trouble.
Do we run the risk of being sued as a city?
I think of course, we always have that risk. I will say this, I'm not sure what that scenario I'm describing to now is dramatically different than what the city of Austin is talking about doing in Travis County, and they've certainly got the attention of the Attorney General. Of course, he loves going after Austin, period, but I do think that's a possibility. If the Attorney General and the Governor seem really committed to their position on this, and he might challenge us as it relates to the ordinance, but again, the advice we've gotten from legal counsel is simply having the ordinance in place in and of itself doesn't expose us to a legal challenge.
I would like to see us to keep it.
Say that again, Mayor?
I would like for us to keep the mandate, or
To extend it, is
to
that what you're
extend
saying?
it, yes.
I don't see where we have any legal standing to extend it based on the verbiage of the governor's order. I mean, just to put it out there just because we feel like it's a good thing to continue is not necessarily, I mean, we're bound as a legal entity, not to make laws according to the laws that are out there. And, I mean, I think that many stores have not loosened their requirements, and I applaud okay with that. But for us, as a city council, to violate what the governor has put out there is flagrant. And I would be in favor of making a recommendation to the business owners of Elgin to do this, but to put it out as an ordinance the way this is stated, I don't think that we can do that.
Tom just said that it's the same as, before.
But it's
It's
not
not
the same as
illegal.
before. I don't agree with him, because
Well, okay, listen, what about the city offices? We're not opening the city offices.
well,
We're
that's
not,
right.
we're gonna require them to come, if you come into contact, we're requiring the city staff or what have you to wear masks.
And that is different. That is
So
different,
that's
Mary,
setting an
because we are-
example. Why would we not, make it, a mandate for everyone if, we're gonna require it?
Because the verbiage says that no jurisdiction will make a law requiring that. We can make it a rule, because we're property owners, that if you come into the city offices, you need to be wearing a mask, but we can't tell business owners, you have to make people wear a mask in your business. And it says that.
Well,
in
several
the order.
business owners have requested it also, because, so that they won't be the, follow guide to where if they require a mask, will request a mask for you to, wear a mask in their, establishment, that, they won't be the bad guy.
Well, they need to understand
And
that
to
they can
lose
put the
business.
post.
We already have a lot of, in this pandemic, we already have a lot of people losing business because there are several people that don't wanna wear a mask.
But they need to understand that the order says that they can post, that
Well,
they
this is what
require.
that's just my
please.
opinion, okay?
And that's what
Thank
we
you.
wanted. We wanted everybody's opinion.
So,
Anybody else? Oh, I'm sorry, Forrest, you weren't done yet.
I'm saying that the businesses are encouraged, if they want to post, and they have the backing of the law. If somebody violates that rule in their store, that they can call the police, and it's trespassing. That verbiage is there.
Okay. Anybody else? I'll entertain a motion one way or the other.
Mayor, I move that we, continue the mandate.
You move that we extend the ordinance.
Extend the ordinance, yeah.
Right, is it 90 days, 60 days?
60 days
60 days?
to May 22nd.
Is there a second? There is no second? Okay, there is no second.
Mm.
No further action required. It can just expire.
I understand what everyone here is saying. I wish that we could extend the ordinance and make it mean something, but I just don't think that it's going to mean anything. It's going to mean what we would like for it to mean. I think as a council, probably we all would strongly encourage the use of masks as appropriate, but as it is now, the ordinance will end tomorrow. And unless somebody makes a motion and we get a second and get a positive vote, that's the way it's gonna be. Okay, I guess that's done. Okay, let's go to item number 2 under new business. An ordinance amending the official zoning map of the city of Elgin, Texas, adopted in chapter 46, section 46.3, revised code of ordinances, city of Elgin, Texas, 2013, and making this amendment a part said official zoning map to wit, to rezone from R1 single-family district to A multiple-family district for lots 40A and 40B, Ashby subdivision. both properties being a total of 0.9538 acres, said tract being more described in Exhibit A and providing for a savings clause and repealing conflicting ordinances and resolutions. Mr. Mattis, the background on this?
Thank you, Mayor. This item is to consider a request for a zoning change by the property owner. The owners of this property had submitted a formal request to the city to change the zoning, as the mayor stated, from single-family to multifamily use. You received a lot of details in your packet about this proposal. This map was in there as well. It kind of shows that this is, the request is for an area that's pretty much completely surrounded by single-family zoning. Plan Commission held its own public hearing and reviewed it. It's made a recommendation to deny the request, and it's here for you this evening. David, do you have any more details or anything to provide?
Yes, this was a property owner-initiated rezoning. They, as Mr. Mattis said, they did recommend denial, and the concerns that they had at the time was that we can go ahead and go to the next slide, please.
Okay.
The rezoning itself would allow for multifamily in that area, which the neighborhood itself is single-family, mostly around there, which would be a use that may not be desirable for that area, considering that the underlying land use allows for single-family homes, and the zoning around it allows for single-family homes. And next slide, please. And also with that change in zoning, the height does increase from 35 feet to 50 feet in size, and some of the side and rear setbacks and some of the other items change. But in particular, the Planning and Zoning Commission had a concern that the additional height would not be really commensurate with the area. And their concern as well, if you allow the rezoning to occur in that area, it would initiate other rezonings that may potentially change the character of that Main Street corridor. And that's therefore that's why they recommended denial, and I am here for any questions that you may have in regards to this item. Thank you.
Mayor, if I could, I'd just add one item that Dave, the staff has also, as stated tonight, I think if everybody's familiar with this piece of property, as said earlier, it is a very unique piece of property, and the home is very unique there, and has existed for a long time, and I've certainly heard stories from folks who lived here a long time about the different uses. So I am of the opinion that single-family use for that building, given its size and shape, and is probably not the highest and best use, but we've tried to engage the representatives of the property owner to talk about a PDD type concept where we'd come to very specific agreement with the city about exactly what could be built instead of just going to a full zoning change.
Or another option could be a specific use as well.
That's right.
Call out a specialized use for that, and there are some other uses that aren't single-family in nature that could go to that site, but that would be something that would be considered through a different application process, recommended by commission, and then ultimately considered by you as the council at that time.
So just wanted to know that it is a situation where we think it deserves some work, but I think through that process as well, as council knows, that would be an opportunity to provide the residents with a lot clearer understanding about the neighboring residents about what the future of that property would be. But the owner chose to make this request, so we're bound to carry it through the process. That's why it's on the agenda tonight.
Okay, so there's no misunderstanding on item number 2. As read, the Planning and Zoning Commission is not in favor of this. Is that correct?
That's correct. They've recommended that council deny the request.
Correct.
We have any comments, questions of David or anybody else? I'll entertain a motion to pass or not pass item number 2.
Mayor, I make a motion that we go with the planning and zoning's recommendation and deny this request.
I second.
Motion has been made that we go with a recommendation of the Planning and Zoning to deny this request by Councilmember Dennis, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Brasher. The vote follows. Councilman Dennis?
Dennis, yes.
Frazier, yes.
Ramirez, yes.
Benson, yes.
Vega, yes.
Prince, yes.
Ibis, yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Mayor, if I could just make
Yes.
it crystal clear for the record, that vote was to deny the request
Yes.
and not to approve the ordinance.
Yes.
Okay, right. I don't want anybody to confuse that vote later.
Sounds weird to say yes to something you're trying to
Yes.
say no to.
Right. Right.
Okay, I suggest that we, council, that we take a 5-minute break. We still have a good 30, 45 minutes. Let's take a 5-minute break, be ready to come back to work in 5 minutes, please. Okay, let's continue to item number 3 under new business. A resolution by the City Council of the City of Elgin, Texas, approving a real estate contract between the City of Elgin Economic Development Corporation and Sykes Industry, and authorizing the mayor to approve the contract. Welcome on.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and City Manager. Basically, this resolution is for, to sell 3 acres of land to Sykes Industries to construct a 15,000 to up to 30,000 square foot plastic molding facility in our business park. I'm just trying to give some location here, particularly for our new members. This is Walmart. This is Buffalo Bank, Roy Rivers, and you're looking at the location in here. So we have about 60 acres of property in here.
Here, I'll go to the next one.
This is where Jericho will be located. So this is that corner. So this is the acreage we're looking at, and then with the 2 acres extension options. And then we have about a 90-foot right of way. We believe a lot of trucks will be going in and out of that facility. And as we build that park out, there'll be more trucks. And I've been working with our city engineer on that. So that 90-foot gives us some nice right of way to get trucks in and out of that facility. So I worked with these guys probably 2 years ago, back in 2019, and they were ready to move forward, and then unfortunately COVID hit, so they kind of put it on hold. But they came back last year, October, brought an LOI to the Economic Development Corporation, and they approved that, and then we went to move forward with a contract. And so the EDC approved the contract at their last meeting in February. Ultimately, it's your guys' decision to approve it finally. I've got 2 members of my board here that approved the contract. It was unanimously approved. What we're looking at is, as I say, 15,000 up to 30,000 square feet facility. It will depend on the equipment that he has. It's very large molding equipment for plastic moldings. So it'll depend on the type of equipment that comes in. And also he'll be employing between 9 to 20 full-time employees. We'll probably start off about 9 or 10. And then as the facility grows, he'll add employees as he moves forward. And they'll have an hourly pay between $15 and $40 an hour. Again, it'll be the manual labor work at the $15. More the high-tech guys using the machines will be up to the $40 an hour. Price of the land is $163,250. Sorry, $350. So we get money in. I know you're talking about budgets all night and spending money, so at least we're bringing some money into the city. And we'll have an investment of approximately $1.5 million. So growing our tax base again. I say 2 council members here, if they have any comments on it, they can just let me know. This guy, it's a couple that own the business. It's Mike Sykes and his wife, Lorraine. His previous job was basically setting up these facilities all over the country. He's now out of his non-compete clause. And then he met with me, as I say, a couple years back, and we're moving forward so he can locate here in Elgin. So he's pretty excited about it. He's in his 90-day due diligence right now, doing soil borings and so on out in the property. Don't see we're gonna have any problems out there at all, so it's a green field, so. If there's any questions?
Anybody have any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Do you know what the appraised value of this property is?
We purchased that property 13 years ago, and we purchased it for 25 cents a square foot. We're selling it to him for $1.25 a square foot, so we're making some dollars on it.
Okay. And what are the terms of the option on?
He has a 2-year option, and that will, again, we'll be selling it to him for $1.25 if he pulls that option.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else? So Sykes Industry, my understanding is they have built similar.
Yeah, he would go out and work with companies that would build. He showed them how to build it and how to set it all up, and what machinery they would need for whatever product they're making.
Okay.
And now he wants to do it himself.
Because he's out of that.
Yeah, his
Non-compete.
non-compete is
Okay.
finished, yeah.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve it as presented.
Motion has been made by Mayor Pro Tem Brasher, seconded by Councilmember Gonzalez to approve item number 3 as presented. We'll take a vote. Mayor Pro Tem Brasher, please.
Treasurer, yes.
Ramirez, yes.
Vincent, yes.
Vega, yes.
Brent, yes.
Ibis, yes.
Dennis, yes?
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 4, under new business, we're going to discuss item number 4 and then bring it together with item number 8 under new business. So we'll start with number 4, a resolution of the City of Elgin, Texas, authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with TRC for professional engineering services related to the County Line Road School Zone Beacons project and making certain findings related thereto.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is one we've discussed previously. This is responding to the request the council made before the staff present a plan for moving forward with placing school zone beacons along County Line Road. You have a copy of the proposal from TRC in your packet for the engineering. This engagement, I forget what the number is, about $6,000 for engineering design specs and bidding of the project, which would include 6 school zone beacons along in this area of along County Line Road, up at the area of the high school and Neidig Elementary both. Bo's here to answer any questions about it. I would just say that this project, the engineering, the preliminary estimate is that the project itself will probably cost between $50,000 and $60,000 by the time we're done, so we're all in. So, and of course, that money was not in the budget this year, but that's our only comment, is make sure that obviously there's no point moving forward with this engagement if we're not kind of all the way in on the construction costs. So.
Bo, can you come and answer some questions? And Councilmember Ibis, this resolution, along with your resolution, item number 8, school zone safety on County Line Road, do you feel comfortable combining the two so that we can?
I do, yeah, so we
Okay.
can discuss it as a whole.
Okay. I'd like to start out with, I thought that we were talking about 2 signs. Councilmember Ibis.
That's what I originally talked about, just as kind of a trial. And, I think we went back to, the city to, give their recommendation. So it sounds like, if I'm understanding correctly, I just threw out, number 2 as a trial, and the city came back with.
Mayor, you may remember when you were on council,
Well, y'all are bringing up 8 years ago a lot today.
the school zones were redone back then by council. They were a lot longer, and they weren't actually separated. And council came back under recommendations by TxDOT that changed the speed limit, they reduced the lengths of those. And so the idea of just putting one on one end and one on the other wouldn't meet what you guys are actually, what your school zones by ordinance actually are. So you gotta have a stop-start feature between all those different intersections. So we can go back and take a look at it. For just dealing with County Line Road, our recommendation would have been the 6. We can try to see if we can squeeze it into 4 in a such a way with the way the traffic comes in, because you have it coming in from 4 different directions. But ultimately, that's what it is. You could put one on in one end and one on the other end, but you do have a delineation between the zones of that entire length of County Line Road.
Which would be delineated by the current signs.
Pretty much, yeah. And if you go down there, there's a stop-start, speed up, stop-start, actually, with that. It used to be the school zone, if I remember correctly, it was almost at 290, and it went almost
Yep.
all the way to Carlson Lane, and it was one continuous, and that was kind of removed after discussions with TxDOT, since they kind of intersect there with FM 1100, that it actually defeated the purpose of the school zone.
Bo, why is it so much?
To engineer, so that
No,
would be-
not the engineer. The
The
engineer is just
pedestals?
$6,000, right, or
Yeah.
$6,800?
The pedestals, so you're gonna have to actually design a foundation that's gonna have to be able to withstand a car wreck out there. So it's not as simple, we're not bolting it down to natural ground. We're also gonna try to locate them in such a location as best we can that they can try to potentially stay there, that you're not gonna be picking them up and moving them again. I can't guarantee that until we get out there, but obviously with the project coming up, this is being looked at, you're going in there now. This is not being added in as part of the County Line Road project. This would be something that, get it out from the manufacturers to the vendor, get out there, pour the concrete, bolt these down. There's a little bit of electrical that has to be looked at to make sure to ultimately hold them up. Ultimately, I hope I'm wrong, Ron, to put it out there, but talking to other projects and comparing it to where we've installed it in other locations, by the time it goes through that process, that's what it is. City staff and talking to them, they're not rebar formers, they're not concrete pourers out there and whatnot, so it would
It's
be.
black dirt, Ron. Ain't gonna hold
Well,
it.
and that's the last of it. It is, if you've gone out there and looked at the contractors who are working out there in the subdivisions, what they're going through just to try to build the roads and the utility infrastructures, it's some of the worst soil you guys have in the city out in that particular area.
So we have, Councilmember Rivas, we have 2 months of school left. And so we're not talking about doing this before school's out.
No, it would be a quick design package to go out to the contractors, hopefully relying on contractors that are already out here, essentially. So, they're not mobilizing or coming through, speccing the vendor to come in there and trying to guarantee that he's getting 6 of them, that we can try to reduce his price, from a cost saving standpoint. But yeah, by the time you order a vendor, they would be up for this next school year. They want to be in for this school year. That would be the goal, is to have them there before school, assuming it's in person, opens up for the new school year.
So where are the 6, because even with the 2 different, zones with 1,100, that would be 4, where are the other 2?
You've got to somehow incorporate FM 1100 as you're coming into the zones. And so this is only a portion of it. I don't have an exhibit that I actually provided to Tom, and I should have done that, exactly where we were estimated to go. And again, I'd like to try to get it to the 4, but I do have to go to TxDOT and make sure that we're in 100% compliance with what y'all's standard is already for.
Because
signals.
1,100 already has the flashing beacons, because that is TxDOT.
Right.
So you're replacing TxDOT's beacons?
Well, TxDOT, because you have the new stop sign and everything over here, some of that's all gonna change, so I'm trying to say, this is where the 6 are gonna be. I have to go back through there for approval. They could say, hey, we're gonna keep ours, you guys do your own thing, keep it separate from our system, but they're gonna have a say in that. So I can say, hey, we can go in 4 and then come back and it ends up being 6. It's not a number, it's gotta go out to bid ultimately for the city.
But
And
I'd just say, to be clear, this engagement, obviously, any contract to actually do the work would come back to council. So you'd have that, if we want to go as far as engaging TRC, they could give you the very detailed engineered drawings. But then you'd still have another bite of the apple to decide whether or not we want to spend the bigger money.
the other question I had, from a budgetary standpoint, seeing, this is, even saying county line widening project, couldn't we use some of the funds that the developers are, rather than, as,
Let me think about that one
Okay.
before I say anything out loud.
Okay.
We have very specific agreements with the developers, but that might be a possibility.
because, if we're talking about, placing these, for the widening project,
I'm
I
following you.
think,
Well, that's the irony of it, I think. If this were included with the widening project, then it would be eligible to use that money.
Just be part of that project.
Which is kind of where we were thinking about just waiting on that and doing it then. Well, the key would be, though, I wouldn't want to have to move them.
Right, and
If we,
without sitting there and spending some time on that, exactly where that needs to be in relation to where this.
will this analysis make that definitive? Will we know by then?
As part of this, yeah, I'm gonna do everything I can to not have to pick them up and move them.
Do you know the engineers that are doing the County Line Road project?
I think so.
Okay, well, I'd assume, so hopefully that we get that question answered. I think that would be it, I guess. If we were sure we were putting them in a place that would just be part of the other project, then we probably could access some of that money.
So to answer your question, yes, I'll be clear if we can or we cannot. And
Okay.
MUTCD, it's not like I'm just making up rules here. I'll check whatever regulations that between TxDOT and MUTCD and then what the city council has passed by ordinance as far as those zones. That sets the parameters. Personally, yes, as a use of city funds, I want to put them out there one time and then not end up using funds to pick them up and move them again as part of this project. Probably like you said, from a timing aspect, if it's a standalone project, we should be able to have them in before school's starting. If they're a part of the County Line Road project, y'all schedule currently, plus or minus right now, is going out to bid sometime early in 2022 for the County Line Road project, and that's probably an 18-month project, 15, 18 months.
Jessica?
I have just a follow-up. I'm curious, because I know the last time we talked about this, when the initial idea, well, not the idea, but just what Thomas proposed, it sounded like we were going to look into options, which we've done from a cost perspective and what it would take. But then I also understood that there was also going to be some outreach to the school district for just, I guess, a conversation. I don't know how they would be involved, but how did that conversation happen, or what, was there any kind of engagement?
Yes, the invitation went out, and basically the school felt that, you know, whatever because the school really doesn't have a say other than their input, I guess. They felt that the city, you know, whatever the city wanted to do that would help would be great.
They're not our friend money.
Yeah.
And they don't, I don't think, for school zone signs, so.
Right, but on that same, seeing 1100 is a state highway, couldn't we ask for the state to pick up the cost if the beacons would have to be on 1100?
I'm sure you could ask them.
Okay.
It doesn't hurt to ask, you can ask them, we're asking them to pay for all of FM 1100 too.
Okay.
That design's already been laid out and sent to them and approved, it's just sitting on a shelf somewhere.
Okay.
So we're already asking to pay for that.
Well, because, you know, I've had conversations with TxDOT about 1100, you know, just right there, Peppergrass, because the crossing,
This is already all conceptually designed and sitting on a shelf with the states of how this is all gonna be in the future. The city's already had a grant from TxDOT and already designed all the hydraulics, all the drainage for this S curve to go away, and then this ends up being a T intersection. Same with this over here ends up being a T intersection. And TxDOT would do this piece and essentially all that piece all the way down to 95. Our design here assumes that part of the project will come into fruition. And this right here has already gone back to TxDOT for their blessing, essentially, that it's not gonna nullify anything the city previously had done related to that concept plan.
okay, can I point out something on this? Right here, Peppergrass just put in this road. There was a crossing across 1100. And they pulled up the sign because the sign was basically at the exit to the road. So now there's no crosswalk sign on 1100, even though it's part of that safe route to school. So if you have those conversations with TxDOT, I know I've had conversations with them that they needed to put that sign back up. But what the developer did is, instead of having the sign on 1100 for the crosswalk, they moved it slightly inside their development. So as people are turning, they know there's crosswalk, but people on 1100 no longer know that there's a crosswalk across 1100.
It's something I can bring up with the Bastrop County office.
Okay.
As far as this approval right here, that's 100% through Bastrop County office. So
Okay.
They dictate everything that happens around there.
Okay.
But I can bring that up as a council issue and see if they can get one of their maintenance crews out there to make some changes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Bo.
No, I have a-
I know the cost is, when it goes out to bid, it'll come back to council. I want it to be cheaper too. I just know that other schools and other cities that we work with, that's where they always seem to kind of drop in. If we can reduce the number of signals, then we'll reduce the number of signals as the final design when it goes out to bid, ultimately. That said, construction prices aren't on the city's favor right now anywhere, for what's going on, out there. I'd much rather have you there and then have egg on my face and it come in lower, Ron, than to say it's gonna be 25 and then come in and explain it as 50 to you.
So, the proposed 6 signals, they're in front of the high school and Nidec Elementary?
Essentially looking at, the corridor is essentially the corridor of County Line Road where they need to be.
Would it be fair, counsel, to say that, I could be looking at this wrong, that they would be a lot more important in front of Nidec than they would the high school? Or no? No? Well, I mean, the high school can read
High
the
school kids,
signs.
they don't, they
Oh, they're
don't.
not.
Say it again?
High school kids, no, they don't think.
Okay, so we're looking at item number 4 under new business. We can entertain a motion to approve that and have Bo do the TRC, or Bo's firm do the,
Have it go out and get you
Yes,
final prices.
right.
And then you can decide.
on item number 8, once we get more. Councilman Ibis, are you okay with that?
I'm fine with that.
You see what I'm saying? We can do number 4 without doing action on number 8?
Yeah, I think that also gives us an opportunity to just think about funds too, like where they would come from. For those, if we hold off on 8 right now. So, I like that idea.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion for item number 4 under new business.
So moved, Simpson.
Okay,
I second.
so the motion was made by Councilmember Pinson, seconded by Councilmember Ibis to approve item number 4 as presented. I'll take a vote, please. Councilmember Pinson?
Pinson, yes.
Bigger, yes.
Brent, yes.
Ibis, yes.
Dennis, yes?
Frazier, yes?
Ramirez, yes. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Bo.
Oh, wait a minute. He's on the next item, too.
Item number 5, a resolution of the City of Elgin, Texas, authorizing the city manager to execute a letter agreement with TRC Engineers for professional engineering services related to making a water system risk and resilience assessment, an emergency response plan, and making certain findings related thereto.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is for mandatory risk assessment we have to do for the water system. What'd you say, Bo, every 5 years?
It's whenever the lobbyists get their way.
All right.
So this is version 2 from the EPA. It was last done in the city, if y'all recall, probably about 15 years ago. And it's a complete assessment of the water supply system. We're looking at, if you read the most recent story in Florida where somebody hacked into the system, where you're looking at some of that resiliency from a security standpoint, from a disgruntled employee, you're looking at the pipes, where the system is at risk. It is not related to the winter, but there's obviously some overlap. But ultimately, this is a federal requirement that you have to submit it for a town of Elgin size. The deadline is in June for the RRA, and then the deadline for the emergency response plan is at the end of the calendar year. And basically, it's getting it in. City staff would not be a public document. It's meant to be kept on lock and key other than with the affected city staff to understand it, and to make plans of anything that's considered vulnerable to cities. So you already have a document of this nature. It was done last by myself 15 years ago, and it's literally in a locked safe here in the city.
So we, this, we didn't realize till today, we didn't include the resolution itself in the packet, so that's, we left it at your place here. You have a hard copy of it. The contract's 50,000. Do you remember the exact number? 50,000. I thought I gave myself one of those, but I didn't. Somebody can help me with that number.
Who does this get sent to?
It's on the
This
resolution
will get
there.
sent directly to the EPA.
EPA,
You have to
okay.
upload everything on their federal website for both the RRA and the emergency response plan. And then the city's meant to keep that document, and then it's ultimately supposed to be updated every 5 years going after the way they've written the new legislative process. Before, it was kind of at the city's, you only had to update it, you know, as you saw the need to update it. I know for a fact the city has not updated it from the last time it was done.
50,758, is that the number? Yeah, that's what this page might be.
Any questions or comments? Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
So move, Benson.
So the motion was made by Councilmember Pinson, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Brasher to approve item number 5 as presented. Vote, please.
Benson, yes.
Vega, yes.
Prince, yes.
Ibis, yes.
Dennis, yes?
Ramirez, yes. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 6 under new business, a resolution by the City of Elgin suspending the May 3rd, 2021 effective date of the proposal by CenterPoint Energy Resources Corporation, doing business as CenterPoint Energy Entex and CenterPoint Energy Texas Gas, South Texas Division to implement interim GRIP rate adjustments for gas utility investment in 2020 and requiring delivery of this resolution to the company and legal counsel. Tom?
Mayor, this item's a routine thing that most of the council, I'm sure, remember that it's just part of the process whenever a gas CenterPoint or any gas company applies for a rate increase. It will ultimately be determined by the state. And, but there's a process where you can go through where cities can suspend the rating, the effective date of the rate increase as stated in the resolution and the information. Typically, the cities always do take that option to delay the rate increase as long as possible. When, in the past, when we've seen CenterPoint or other entities do a significant increase, there'll be a coalition of cities that get together to try to challenge it. Because frankly, unless you're a large city, it's not cost effective to spend the money to try to challenge this legally. It only works if we pool resources. In this case, we haven't heard from TML or any other coalition, so there doesn't seem to be any effort. We've joined those in the past, but we don't have any now. But as far as tonight goes, this is a formality that we'd recommend doing. If anything, it puts off the rate increase in a way that's in the council's discretion. Not really much we can do about it long term.
Okay, so basically what we're doing is just moving it back
That's correct.
legally as far as we can.
Right, that's right.
We have a motion?
Second.
So the motion is made by Mayor Pro Tem Brasher, seconded by Councilmember Dennis to approve item number 6 under new business as presented. Vote, please.
Frazier, yes.
Ramirez, yes.
Benson, yes.
Vega, yes.
Prince, yes.
Ibis, yes.
Dennis, yes.
Passes unanimously. I am glad to see this on number 7. Appointments to the Building Standards Commission for partial terms. We have 2 new members that we would like to appoint, Reagan Dumbeck and Brian Lundgren. Anybody have any questions or comments? Obviously, good candidates for this board.
David, you got anything to add, or?
I have nothing to add in regards to it. I'm here for any questions you may have.
Is that gonna fill the positions?
Yeah, the board will be full out if you decide to appoint these 2 members.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, Dennis.
Motion made by Councilmember Dennis, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Brasher to approve item number 7, the 2 appointments to the Building Standards Commission, Reagan Dumbeck and Brian Lundgren. Vote, please.
Dennis, yes.
Frazier, yes.
Ramirez, yes.
Benson, yes.
Vega, yes.
Prince, yes.
Ibis, yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay, let's go to item number 8, school zone safety on County Line Road. Councilmember Ibis, and I believe it's been agreed that we're going to table this until we get further information. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Moving on, item number 9. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Elgin, Texas, authorizing the submission of a Texas Community Development Block Grant Program application to the Texas Department of Agriculture for the 2021-2022 Community Development Fund, and authorizing the mayor or city manager to act as the city's executive officers and authorized representatives in all matters pertaining to the city's participation in the Texas Community Development Block Grant Program. Tom?
Thank you, Mayor. This item is a formality for us to file a grant. This is actually the grant application for $350,000 that was listed earlier for the Carver lift station. Whenever we file these grants, it's a requirement that the council pass a resolution approving the filing. Actually, items 9 and 10 are connected. The next item on 9 is connected to the same application. As council may recall in the past too, we have to council has to formally adopt the citizen participation plan related to this same application. But they need to be separate action items.
Okay. That's an awful big resolution to just give us permission, I guess. So we have a motion by any chance?
So moved, Benson.
Second.
Motion made by Councilmember Pinson, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Brasher to approve item number 9 as read. Vote, please.
Benson, yes.
Vega, yes.
Prince, yes.
Ibis, yes.
Dennis, yes.
Frazier, yes.
Ramirez, yes. Motion passes unanimously. And we'll go straight to item number 10, which is related to this, the Texas Community Development Block Grant 2021-2022 Citizen Participation Plan.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
So the motion is made by Mayor Pro Tem Brasher, seconded by Councilmember Dennis to approve item number 10 as read. Vote, please.
Frazier, yes.
Ramirez, yes.
Benson, yes.
Vega, yes.
Prince, yes.
Ibis, yes.
Dennis, yes.
Motion passes unanimously. We will not be going into executive session tonight. Do we have any announcements, council?
Little League opening ceremonies are Saturday.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Little League.
Little League.
Opening ceremonies for they're actually playing is Saturday.
Okay,
So watch for little critters out that way.
okay. Anybody else? Okay, if there's no further announcements, I will adjourn this meeting at 9:45 PM.